Hey everyone, it's Raj from 3CB Performance. Demarcus Cousins picked up another serious injury, a complete anterior cruciate ligament ACL rupture in his left knee playing on a pickup game while trying to get back to 100% fitness after an Achilles rupture in late January 2018 while playing for the Pelicans and a partial left quad tear in the first round of last season's playoffs while playing for the Warriors. Obviously, another major injury, his third within 18 months on the same leg, is clearly a major cause for concern, especially as he'll now have another 7+ months of rehab, lost fitness, and even more residual deficits. However, my focus in this video is to take the injury analysis multiple levels deeper by explaining how the series of injuries are all connected and why the way he tore his left ACL, aka the mechanism of injury, is the reddest of red flags and may indicate that Cousins is fundamentally physically compromised. When a player gets hurt, of course the diagnosis is very important because it informs you of severity, timetable, and risks. However, what I also look at is how the injury happened, known as the mechanism of injury. I'll ask questions like, was it contact or non-contact? Does the injury make sense based off the specific movement during which it happened? What other factors could be in play? These questions and answers provide a wealth of information on potential root causes and underlying deficits that may have caused the injury. In Demarcus' case, his first two injuries made sense, but his ACL rupture hints at something far more nefarious and compromising. Let's take a look at each. Demarcus' left Achilles rupture occurred while he was doing a quick double jump on a rebound. This movement puts a huge stress on the Achilles tendon as it first has to elongate while contracting, known as eccentric contraction, and then recoils like a spring to push off the ground. That's a common mechanism of injury for the Achilles tendon. Further, in the lead up to the rupture, Demarcus' game minutes had jumped up significantly, which is another risk factor because increasing week-to-week activity by over 10% has been found to increase muscle and tendon injury risk by as much as 7x. This is known as the acute to chronic workload ratio. Additionally, that jump in minutes can lead to increased fatigue, which is another known risk factor for soft tissue injury. Demarcus' left partial quad tear, like his Achilles tendon rupture, also made sense based on the MOI. He was chasing after a loose ball and decelerating to gather it. This movement created a triple stress on the quads, specifically the rectus femoris muscle, actively involved in flexing the hip, and eccentrically controlling knee flexion to slow down the front leg and create a stable base of support, all on the dead run. That's a massive stress on the rectus femoris, which was potentially already weakened from residual muscle atrophy that's been shown to occur for up to 2 years on the injured leg after an Achilles rupture. Additionally, the quads were likely taking on more stress than usual for 3 reasons. Firstly, a weakened Achilles and calf complex, again from the Achilles rupture, means a larger force shock wave into and above the knee. Secondly, the playoffs are a higher intensity setting, which leads to increased physical exertion and load through the body. To that point, the research shows a positive relationship between match intensity and injury risk. Thirdly, all the muscles in his left leg, including the quads, which are major stabilizers and movers, were compensating for the recovering Achilles tendon and taking on more stress. Demarcus' ACL rupture doesn't make much sense based on the MOI, as he injured the knee while loading up his left leg to finish a right-handed layup. This movement typically stresses the quads to control knee flexion, bending, and stresses the hamstrings and calf complex to control the tibia, shin bone, as it translates forwards. And yet Demarcus, who'd also lost considerable weight to decrease the amount of load and force he was putting through his body, ended up fully rupturing the ACL. This sequence places very mild stress on the anterior cruciate ligament, but nothing that comes close to even moderately tensioning it, let alone completely rupturing it. It's a complete mismatch of movement and injury, which immediately led me to believe that Cousins' left leg has been fundamentally compromised. A key component of biomechanical function and physical viability is a concept known as, quote, active versus passive stabilization. Active stabilization refers to the body's muscles and tendons actively contracting during movement to stabilize joints and attenuate stress. They are the body's main shock absorbers. On the other hand, passive stabilization refers to anatomy like the ligaments in joint capsules, which don't actively contract but provide added static stability to help keep joints within their normal range of motion. These passive constraints are secondary stabilizers and generally don't attenuate nearly as much stress as the active stabilizers. To that point, we're seeing more and more research showing that after an ACL rupture, for example, extensive rehab and muscle strengthening can be just as effective as surgical intervention and rehab. Highly functioning muscles and tendons can actually make up for the loss of stability from the ACL. When Demarcus loaded his left leg to jump, his left quad, hamstrings, and calf/Achilles complex, the primary active stabilizers during that movement, which should have been taking the majority of that load, didn't, leaving the ACL to fend for itself and take on a level of stress it wasn't built for, resulting in the full rupture. This lack of active stabilization is an extremely red flag and fundamentally compromises the mechanics and function of the body. There are two primary underlying reasons I can think of for why Demarcus's active stabilizers were compromised. The most obvious reason is muscular strength and endurance deficits. As I said earlier, the research shows that it can take over 2 years to achieve equal side-to-side strength after Achilles rupture, with calf atrophy lasting even longer. Further, you add his partial quad tear, which further exacerbates the side-to-side strength deficits. The cherry on top is that Demarcus was in rehab for the better part of 18 months, which naturally results in a loss of overall fitness as well. This only compounds those strength deficits as well. The neuromuscular system is the connection between the nerves and the soft tissue, muscles, tendons, ligaments, and so on. The wiring, the nerves, signal the machinery, the soft tissue, to turn on when they're needed. If that connection is damaged or hindered, it leads to altered muscle and tendon activation and altered proprioception, which is your body's unconscious awareness of joint positioning, transmitted to the brain by tiny cells called proprioceptors housed in muscles and ligaments. In other words, the active stabilizers are impaired because the nerves aren't telling them what to do or when to do it as quickly as a nerve should be. Research shows that injuries, particularly those with excessive swelling, can hamper and inhibit the neuromuscular system, termed neuromuscular inhibition. Further, recent research is actually showing that the brain itself is affected after certain injuries, with changes to the brain's postural and movement control centers. This isn't only after severe injuries, even minor ankle sprains are potentially resulting in those brain changes. Everything in the mind and body is connected, and now the research is beginning to reinforce the practical changes. Even if we do assume that Demarcus's muscle and tendon strength and endurance was the level it needed to be, it wouldn't matter if the wiring wasn't working. That's the danger of neuromuscular inhibition. It fundamentally compromises the entire system. All in all, I had a positive outlook for Cousins when the team originally signed him. He was extremely motivated, lost significant weight to decrease the load on his body, the partial quad tear had healed, and their research shows it typically takes about 2 years for players to return to pre-injury levels after an Achilles rupture. I was looking forward to seeing him really ramp up closer to his old form as he hit that 2-year mark near the 2020 All-Star break and into the playoffs. But all that changed when I saw how the injury happened and the mismatch between mechanism and severity. The red flags began waving. Accordingly, I'm fairly confident that if he didn't get injured now, it would have happened at some point during the season. These fundamental deficits now indicate to me that it's an extreme long shot for him to ever get close to his previous form, or perhaps even make it through a season healthy, as he faces yet another lengthy 7 to 9 month rehab process even more residual deficits that will further build on and compound his current ones, and another overall loss in fitness. The key thing for him right now is simply to get his mind right. Thanks for watching. My goal is to provide you with in-depth, evidence-based, narrative-free analysis. You can always find me on IG and Twitter at 3CB Performance, along with my own YouTube channel where I deep dive into player injuries of all shapes and sizes. 3CB out.